All right, so in today's video, we'll be talking about sole proprietorship versus LLC versus S Corp. Which one should you choose? In this video, we'll be covering everything you guys need to know about these three business entity types. We'll go over the pros and cons of each, as well as what makes sense for what situation. Now, as a serial entrepreneur myself, I have had sole proprietorships, I've had multiple LLCs, I've also had multiple S Corps. Now, basically just share everything I know about each of these business types, and hopefully it can help you guys make an informed decision about which one to have. Now, if you do want to start an LLC or an S Corp, I recommend using a service like Northwest or IncFile to do this for you. I've never filed for an LLC or S Corp myself manually. I've always hired a service to do it for me. We will put links down below, so if you do want to support the channel and get the best pricing possible, you guys can use those links to set up your LLC or S Corp. So let's first talk about sole proprietorships. Okay, so this is basically a business structure with one single owner. It does not apply if there's more than one individual behind the company. And basically, when you guys first launch a business, you are automatically considered to be a sole proprietor, unless you decide to form an LLC or an S Corp or C Corp. By default, your business, whatever side hustle, whatever you're doing, it's gonna be a sole proprietorship. This means that if I go outside right now and I start selling lemonade, this business is considered a sole proprietorship. And this does mean that your personal and business assets are sort of joined together, right? There's no legal separation between them. So just know that whenever you start a business and start making money, whether it be washing cars, whether it be mowing lawns, having an agency, even starting a YouTube channel, this is automatically considered a sole proprietorship. So it's the default business entity, even though it's not an entity. Now, the advantages of a sole proprietorship are that it's super simple and super cheap. There are no additional required filings, and it really is the perfect business structure for someone that has a side hustle or a hobby that makes some money. For example, if you're selling homemade crafts on Etsy and you're making maybe, let's say, $5,000 a year, then this would be perfect for a sole proprietorship. With a sole proprietorship, there is no double taxation. And as you'll see with sole proprietorships, LLCs, and S Corps, all these do not have double taxation. This means that your business doesn't need to pay taxes, and then whatever money you make from the business after that also gets taxed, right? That's not the case. Any money you make through your sole proprietorship, it passes on to your personal income tax filing, and you'll pay taxes that way. Now, in terms of the disadvantages, there's no personal asset protection for a sole proprietorship. So let's say you are washing cars as your business and you damage a car and the client sues you. Well, they can come after your own personal assets. So if you own a house, if you own stocks, stuff like that, they can come for that stuff. But for most people, it's not really gonna matter, and that separation is not gonna be super important. So then that brings us to the limited liability company, an LLC. This is a type of US business structure with one or more owners who are called members. It's gonna offer the same benefits of a corporation, but with a much more simple management. So when we compare this to a sole proprietorship, an LLC offers way more protection when it comes to liability should there be any lawsuits. So an LLC is treated as a separate business entity from you, the owner. While the sole proprietorship, it's you, right? It's the same thing. So basically the LLC owns the business and all the assets, while the LLC members run the LLC. So if you have a business that could get sued, then I'd say an LLC is definitely something you should consider. Having that extra layer of security is one big reason why people love LLCs. I think that's the biggest main protection for an LLC. If people sue you, they cannot come after your own personal assets. But one thing to consider is, do you actually have any personal assets, right? If you don't, then maybe you don't need that protection. And of course, just like a sole proprietorship, there is no double taxation. This means that all the profit is taxed in a single filing, which is on your personal income tax filing. It's pretty simple to create and maintain an LLC, especially when compared to a corporation. There are no required board meetings, there's no directors or officers. It has a much more flexible structure, but there are of course some disadvantages to an LLC. It is more expensive to establish than having just a sole proprietorship. There are also filing fees, there's annual taxes, there's annual reports that you need to keep track of. You also may need certain permits or licenses to do business. You also may need to hire a registered agent. All these things add to the cost of setting up your business. There's a lot more formal paperwork and things to keep in compliance with. You do need an articles of organization, operating agreement in most cases, as well as other documentation. Setting up an LLC, it's not like super easy. Although if you use a service to do it for you, it becomes quite simple. There's also zero tax advantages with having an LLC. All the net income flows directly to your personal return and you pay taxes on that. But if you do want something that does give you some tax advantages, you can can have an LLC and elect to have it taxed as an S Corp. There's basically a form that you need to file for that, or you can actually go ahead and directly form an S corporation. And that brings us to the next section. So an S Corp is basically a special type of corporation in the US that elects to pass corporate income, losses, deductions, credits, all that stuff to their shareholders for federal tax purposes. So to qualify as an S Corp, you must have a domestic entity. You must have only allowable shareholders. There can't be more than 100 shareholders, and there can only be one class of stock. Basically, an S corporation is a real corporation, whereas an LLC is more of a business entity, but it's very similar in the fact that any income you make passes directly to the shareholders, which in most cases is just going to be yourself and whoever is your business partner. Now, the main difference is that sole proprietorships and LLC members, they pay taxes on the entire business's net income. Whereas for an S corporation, you only need to pay the income tax on your share of the wages. So basically, if you start an S Corp, you'll pay taxes on the salary that you decide to give yourself. The IRS does require you to pay yourself a reasonable salary for the work that you perform. Whatever remains in the business after you pay yourself, that is going to flow to you as a distribution. And I know this sounds kind of complicated, and we're going to go into more detail on what this actually means. Let's say, for example, we have an LLC and we have an S Corp. In both of these companies, it makes $100,000 in net profit in a certain year. Now, with the LLC, we are going to get taxed on that $100,000. We're going to pay federal and state income tax. Since it's also self-employment income, we will need to pay that 15.3% self-employment tax. And yeah, that gets really, really expensive. Now, with an S corporation, let's say we make that same $100,000 net profit. What we're going to do is we are going to choose to pay ourselves a salary from that profit. So let's say we pay ourselves $40,000 as a W-2 salary. So you essentially are an employee of your own business. And then the rest of the money, that's $60,000, that is paid to you through a distribution. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. So for that $40,000 salary that you pay yourself, you need to pay federal tax, state tax, as well as that self-employment tax. However, on that $60,000 distribution, you do not need to pay the self-employment tax. You do need to pay federal and state taxes, but you save on that 15.3% as self-employment tax. As you guys can see, you can save a good chunk of money doing this. In this particular case, you will save about $9,000 in taxes just by having an S corporation versus an LLC. And again, if you have an LLC, but you want to be taxed like an S Corp, you don't need to, dissolve your LLC and create another S Corp. Instead, you can just elect to have your LLC taxed as an S Corp. And there's a form that you fill. Now, an S Corp also is a separate business entity, so you do get the same liability protection. And yeah, that sort of brings us to the disadvantages of an S Corp. So the first is that it's more difficult and expensive to set up an S corporation. A sole proprietorship is free, an LLC costs some money, but an S Corp costs the most. There are more fees, there's the annual report, you'll need a registered agent, and you also need to pay to run payroll. This usually costs about $50 per month. You'll also need a board of directors and corporate officers, although this is likely just going to be you if you are the sole owner of the business. You also need to run shareholder meetings, have stock, and keep meeting minutes. So yeah, if you're making over, let's say $40,000, $50,000 in net profit in your business in a given year, it's going to make sense for you to either choose to go with an S corporation or an LLC taxed as an S Corp. Both will be exactly the same in terms of how much you pay in taxes. But it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of intricate things about these things. So I definitely just recommend talking with a lawyer or accountant or someone that knows everything, knows your whole situation, and they can basically recommend the best business type for you. Again, if you want to create your LLC or S corporation or even C corporation, we'll leave links down below to IncFile as well as Northwest Registered Agent. Both of these can help you guys create your business entity for you. It's super cheap, 1000% worth it. And every single business entity that I have created for myself, I've used a service like these two. It basically makes sure that you file everything correctly, because trust me, you don't want to do the paperwork incorrectly because that's going to lead to a lot of future headaches. But yeah, that's basically an overview of the differences and pros and cons between sole proprietorships, LLCs, and S Corps. I encourage you guys to do some more research about this. And with that research, you will be able to choose which type to have. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys got some value from it. And if you guys did, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe for more content just like this. The channel is completely dedicated to giving you guys free guides and tutorials helping you to start and grow your business. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.